Let me say a good morning to you once again. Welcome to the Mid-Morning Buzz, Classic Radio, GBN TV. Good morning to those of you listening via social media platforms, whether it's the Facebook page, YouTube channels. Good morning. Those of you via GBN's webpage, it's gbn.gd. Good morning and welcome. I'm your host, GT. Let me say good morning to my guests. Good morning, good morning. As they usually say, ladies first, let me say good morning to, because there's Sofia Greaves with us this morning. Good morning.
Good
welcome.
Morning to you.
We have Mr. Rodney Grant with us also.
Good morning.
And Mr. Chris Deriggs. Good morning and welcome to the Mid-Morning Buzz. Good morning to you folks. How's everybody doing?
We good.
Good.
We well, thanks.
I find Rodney's still looking a little jet
Yeah,
lagged.
I'm a little drowsy, but I'm good. I'm good all as well.
All right. I'm picking up from the accent thus far that you folks are from Barbados.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we are.
Yes, sir.
You can never hide the accent, huh?
It's true. Every part of the region got distinct, nuance to the language.
Yeah. I know someone, a Barbadian, who's been living in Grenada for the past 50 years. And still speaks the same way.
Wow.
How do you know? He lives here for the last 50 or more. Maybe probably more.
My grandfather was from Barbados.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in his 80s, he was still speaking
Bajan.
Bajan after being in Grenada for most of his life.
Most of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something about it. Unlike us Grenadian, we could speak as anyone. I guess Mr. Deriggs will know that. We could imitate any language. Anywhere we go, we could instantly make that switch. Anyway, welcome to the program this morning, folks. Our conversation this morning is based on a particular project that will be taking place. Mr. Deriggs will give us share some information about his role in it. And Mr. Deriggs is part of the Heritage Theatre. And they are hosting this particular project. It's called the Cultural Heritage Identification Preservation Project, or CHIP. To summarize it easily. Yes. Starting off with you, Mr. Deriggs, tell us a wee bit about this project. Of course, the part that Heritage Theatre is of course, getting this particular project together.
Well, I would refer to it as another leg in the long history of collaboration between Finance Creative Workshop and the Heritage Theatre Company of Grenada. Of course, we are working within the context of a broader program of collaboration, which our colleagues from Barbados refer to as Fusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? But this is all part of collaboration among people in the culture and creative arts in the region. We speak a lot about Caribbean integration, and a lot of it is played out at the level of politics and formal ministerial meetings and agreements and protocols. We believe that the exchanges that take place between people in their civil society organizations, in their cultural groups, are essential to this Caribbean integration process, and will give real meaning and significance to regional integration if it happens that way, and it is not happening if it doesn't happen that way. So this is part of, I want to say that, as a theatre company, Heritage has been pushing for that kind of collaboration for decades, and we are happy when we engage with Finance. We have actually hosted them, they have hosted us in Barbados, and we have had that kind of mutually beneficial exchange. I remember in the 1970s, as far back as 1976, I went to a meeting in Quadranton College in Barbados, and there was Paul Keynes Douglas, Ken Cosby from Guyana, and Mark Matthews, Trevor Rohn, and Alwyn Bully. Trevor Rohn from Jamaica, Alwyn Bully, a stalwart of Caribbean theatre, and so on, and former UNESCO rep for the Eastern Caribbean. At that meeting, we hammered out something called Caribbean Theatre Information Exchange. And the essence of it was, how do we work together to help each other and lift each other up, as like kindred spirits in the creative arts and cultural arts. So we in Heritage, we have a long history of that collaboration. And when we were engaged by Finance, by Rodney and Sofia, and they asked us to work with them for what is called CHIP, which focuses a lot on the intangible cultural heritage. So we were very pleased and willing to engage with them. So they came here, they met with activists and cultural reps at a meeting at the Trade Center
last year.
September.
And so a number of things were agreed upon in terms of how this project can go forward and the roles that different organizations can play. So their visit here is a follow-up.
Okay.
It's a monitoring exercise to see where things are going with this particular project. So we are happy to welcome them, and we are happy to continue collaborating with them.
All right. Let me say good morning once again to Ms. Greaves. Tell me, you're the Chief Executive Officer of Pineland, of course, Creative Workshop. Tell us a wee bit about Pineland.
Actually, it's Pineland.
Pineland. Why am I saying pin? But it's Pineland. Pineland. Let me get it.
It's unfortunate your program only have 25 minutes.
Yes.
But Pineland is a vast organization.
25 years.
You know, 46 years organization.
Give us that 25 years in a nutshell.
46 years in a nutshell. All right. Pineland's basically birthed out of a chaotic and traumatic scenario, flooding, where persons had to be pushed together in a new environment, and it's unfortunate with not a lot of social structures and amenities in place and not well thought out housing design. But from that, we were able to translate that or transform that community using sports and culture and the Pinelands Creative Workshop. Before that, it would have been the preceding organizations, like the Pinelands Development Council, that would have spearheaded a lot of cultural initiative as a means of transforming the community. Because the community was known for, if you're known for pea, pine, and prison, once you come from the pine, automatically, even if you go for walking down the street too late, automatically go to prison just because you came from the prime. Yeah. We had a significant rough upbringing, but because of the nature of the leadership that birthed out of the Pine during that early era, the organization was able to use the art form and sports to really start to change the image of a community and continue to do that in terms of meeting the new challenging and evolving, and even that allowed us to move also every decade to look at the new needs of that community, whether we move from just theater and sports and dance, then we added education, then we added technology, now we're into discussing climate literacy. So the organization continued to evolve based on the emerging needs of the community after being birthed from such a rough beginning. We have managed through a lot of disasters in our community to use our various knowledge and needs as a means of propelling it forward. And again, I must say, the community of itself have been extremely fortunate to have leadership with vision and intention in terms of transforming the community. So that is a little bit of pilots. I don't think we have even scratched the surface, but there's kind of a synopsis. But again, because of that, allowed us to birth initiatives like the CHIP project and others that we are currently running on the ground.
Tell me about CHIP. Tell me about CHIP. I mean, who's wanted to, of course, give me a little more details about CHIP so that I could get a grasp of what's going on.
Okay, fantastic. As Chris would have said, key for Pinelands in 1988, we would have formulated a relationship with the Mallet foot performers in Trinidad with a key emphasis on cultural retention, cultural sharing. As cultural engineers, as where Pinelands sit, we thought it was important to, and after having gone through COVID too, that was another traumatic period, we realized that, it was critical that we start to mine the information, that living heritage in the minds of people, because we were losing a lot of our cultural practitioners and our knowledge bearers and our elders. And so CHIP was formulated during COVID and was submitted to the Creative Caribbean Initiative, which is supported via UNESCO and CARICOM and the EU. And it was a 2-year wait, but again, they recognize the value and the importance of such an investment in terms of our intangible cultural heritage. And therefore, it spoke to us working in Tobago and Grenada and in Barbados, and we again use our cultural, our cultural fusion partners to do the on-the-ground rollout for us, to continue to see this as a critical element and a relationship with our fusion and our original intent. And so far we have been able, through Heritage Theatre Company, to speak to a lot of the critical players on the ground, key stakeholders on the ground, key knowledge bearers, to really start to capture that information that now we can be able to be used for educational purposes, continuing learning, intergenerational learning. And it fits nicely with the direction that the government is now looking to move towards in terms of their cultural heritage and the preservation, whether it's tangible or intangible. So I think recognizing the environment in which we operate is also key about Fusion and its Fusion members to continue to be responsive and also complement that which our governments and our development agencies are doing.
How important it is, do you feel? I'm not sure which one of you would like a chiming of this in terms of preserving that culture and heritage part of the community, especially among Caribbean people.
I will let my colleague jump in here. Give him a chance to speak.
Okay, I will answer that by referencing one of our ancestral elders, Walter Rodney. He said, African people have an ancestral dignity that they must rediscover and keep alive. And wrapped up in that ancestral dignity is so much of our norms, our practices, the things that we hold dear, the things that we saw our grandparents do, the things that grounded us, that molded us, that created moral values and moral grounding. And these things are what we call the intangible cultural heritage. It is knowledge. That is why it is intangible. It's knowledge in people's heads. But it's an intangible thing that we can create products and services out of. And therefore, these things that our ancestral and ancestors held dear, that now form the basis of what we practice as culture. I mean, right here in Grenada, you have so many different aspects of the festivals. And when we look at their characters, there's a lot of discussion when we were here last year about the Jab Jab. When we went over to Tobago last year as well, there was a lot of discussion there about the Jab Jab as well, because there was something that happened in England with a tour group that went over. They have the Sharkney. You have all these different characters that now form the basis of your festival, which is a part of not only your cultural retentions, but it's part of your tourism product. So retaining our intangible knowledge, and as much as we and it's important because right now we are faced with so many distractions with the introduction of technology. Technology is bringing so much things into your space. And people are just distracted. I mean, you can hardly sit and have conversations now for everybody just being on some kind of device. People are perplexed by likes and sharing, and these are the things that consume people. And although it is useful, it kind of erodes purpose. It erodes our deep intent as a people to be able to capture the things that are right before us, and therefore we have to find in all of this noise, in all of this clutter that technology brings. We have to find a way to keep the things that are dear to us, that are meaning to us as a society, that formulates the essence of who we are as people. We have to find a way to keep these things alive. And therefore, this thing of intangible cultural heritage should be dear to us as a Caribbean people because we have so much of it. We have so much to share. Who we are is because of our ancestors, because of the process of slavery, and all that we know, we learn from them. Our rituals, and they have a lot of important rituals, how we deal with marriage, how we deal with death, how we deal with birth, how we deal with transition from a childhood to adolescence. And these are the things that form the nuance of socialization and help to form society and structure, create structure. Now, if we allow these things to be eroded, then we are eroding the very essence of ourselves, the very structure of our societies. And that's why we have so much complications and we can't figure it out, because we are now engaging things that are not of us. We're being consumed by the wider world and we're being brought out. So we have to find the balance. So that's why for me, as a person working with this project, engaging and retaining our intangible cultural heritage is absolutely vitally important. And for me, it should be the number one thing on our agenda. Because culture is the essence of a people. It will help to structure society. And for me, and look, when we look at the Cuban Revolution, for Castro, and culture was so important that Fidel Castro hardly went to any meeting, whether it was economic, social, or otherwise, unless he had his cultural practitioners there, because he understood. I mean, we look at the Cuban society, they're grounded. They're grounded in who they are. They're rich culturally, and despite all they're going through, with all the challenges with the embargo and stuff, they're still holding it together. Now, what is the essence that held them together? It's who they are as a people. So, we can't throw these things out, just because the European world is throwing at us technology and all these distractions. So that's my say on it.
Just to follow through on what you've been saying, I'm sensing that, a lot of folks will say that we have gotten to the stage where generations are losing. Yeah. Their culture, their generation, especially the modern generation, as we will call it. How concerned are you folks about that?
We should be, and because, look, we can't ignore that culture changes and it shifts, but still there's some values that have to move from here and keep being transported into the new thing. So, at the core of ICH is how do we contemporize traditions to make it useful for this generation and future generations. So that is the concern, and I think this is a challenge for more governments. And in all the discussions and moving around with this project, and particularly around the festivals, there are concerns by governments saying how our festivals are being eroded. Yeah. We are moving from traditional mass and we are engaging what we call beads and feathers, which have no meaning, it has no significance, it has no value, it tells no stories. And therefore, we should be concerned, because at the core of our cultural expressions should be the ability to keep transferring information, stories that are useful for development, useful for character building. So therefore, it should be of concern to us, because if we lose our ability to keep transferring messages that are critical to social economic development, then what do we have? What are we left with?
I also like to refer to it as the importation of foreign cultures upon us. Foreign cultures upon us, especially getting that is out of the Caribbean region. That are imported on us so strongly that we forget our regular selves as Caribbean people. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, most of the costumes we see are the feather type. That's not really what we are as Caribbean people. No. Simple as that.
Before we move on, I want to chime in on this because my other hat is the Cultural Foundation.
Yes,
and we are going very big on the question of retention, question of research, documentation. Mm-hmm. You reference festivals. One of the projects that we are undertaking in this year is a documentation of our festivals and an attempt to publish a document which identifies our festivals and their significance. We want to do the same thing with Carnival. A documentation of Grenadian Carnival. We know that the Spice Mars Corporation is responsible for the administration of Carnival, but the Cultural Foundation is responsible for the Carnival product. Yes. And this is why we have been engaging with the Traditional Mass Band Association. In fact, we have actually worked with activists within the mass band environment to create a Traditional Mass Band Association. So that is there now as a formally established body.
Good.
With the initiative of the Cultural Foundation. And we are looking at what is authentic in terms of Grenada's Carnival and so on. And there are other projects that, that we are undertaking in that vein. There's a program which we have called the Calypso series, where, we're interviewing some of the icons in Grenadian Calypso and to do a proper documentation and so on. So we're speaking about intangible heritage, and all that is part of it. Yesterday I had the privilege of sitting with some students at TAMCC. They had a library week, and I was given the opportunity to converse and exchange with them and so on. And the point that was resonating throughout all the discussions was, how do we document, how do we research, how do we publish, and so on. Do you know there are 131 published authors, dead and alive, of Grenadian birth.
Never knew that.
And so the Published Writers Association has been instrumental in pushing that kind of documentation and to give visibility and so on. So yes, we need to push the whole retention concern and so on, and authenticity concern, and we need to push back against what is taking over our festivals, especially Carnival. What we're seeing as somebody make a joke, you could actually email a carnival costume now, because the thing gets so small, you understand, and so on, right? So, you see what's going on, right?
No, let's focus a wee bit. That's
I try to picture that, right?
let's get into about the main purpose of this intervention. Who's going to grab on that for me? The main purpose of this intervention.
Chet.
Yes.
Oh. Well, I guess I'm stuck with this.
I'm very disruptive.
That's disruptive thinking. Well, yes, the usefulness of the information and basically it complements what Chris would have said in terms of their work, having the information more accessible to students. So too when they're doing their CSEC, when tutors, because we have had requests from persons in international environments, professors asking about Caribbean information. It's there for that. Because when we have a season where students are preparing for their exams, their CSEC and their SBAs, we are usually inundated with a number of calls in terms of key information for their research. So again, with the information displaced and scattered, we have been able to pull a lot of information into a centralized repository where we have our website under the Fusion heading for research and development, where now persons can go to the archive, see this information that represents Grenada and Barbados and Tobago to start, because this is just the beginning. The wealth and the vast the richness of the Tobago cultural heritage is quite, it's a lot. But we've only started with these 3 interviews per country, Grenada, Tobago, and Barbados. But there's a lot more that has to be done, but it's there for the students, for researchers, practitioners, professors who are engaging in cultural studies across the world. So it's useful for society and it's global. So the access to it is there through the Pinelands website and availability via Heritage Theatre Company and the various ministries related to the
maintaining that particular, should I say, the project. There's always a maintenance, the focus, the goal. Where we go from there?
Well, the goal for me, and Rodney might probably jump in because we often bounce a lot of stuff off each other. I think my goal as CEO of Pinelands right now rests in the strengthening and revitalization of Fusion, and that will be the body that we carrying it, but also supporting the Fusion will be our cultural heritage center that will allow for greater research to be done as an element within Fusion, the department within the Fusion. Because Fusion, again, these are the very practical and the action-oriented people where we are sharing our work. But then the research continues to fuel work and information to them. Because when Rodney and Chris, they're writing, this repository now is available to them that they can pull information to make sure the authenticity and the historical data is there to allow what we see on stage to be reflective of society. So, the value is important. Where we are going with it that's the first step, but again, as we continue to work and evolve and the environment continues to speak to us, because as culture engineers, we got to listen to the environment, we got to continue to evolve. So this project, this is the embryonic stage, but I can't say in 20 years where it could be, because when we hand it over, we ask our young people that we are now training to continue to expand and build in terms of what is necessary for the times. But for now, it's the Culture Fusion, using our Center for Cultural Heritage Research and Implementation to continue to go forward in this initiative.
Right.
So if I can add to it quickly. So if we paint the domestic picture,
Yes.
and we don't live in a space by ourselves, we live in a global world. And the project itself is grounded in UNESCO's 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. Now, so what does that mean? It allows us as a region to be able to internationalize our local culture, put it in an international space. And because culture must have value, so apart from having the social value, it must have an economic value in a way that the country can benefit from it, in the same way that other sectors, tourism, environment, health, and whatever, has value. And therefore, by putting it in the international space through the convention, is now exposed to all of those countries who are signed on. You have over 195, I think, or 99 countries. So by placing it in that global space, you're now internationalizing your culture. So you now have the opportunity to add value in a different space in a way that it comes back to the country. So it has domestic value and it has international value. So you know, we don't just capture the information, you leave it there, but we look at now how we can turn that information into something as valuable in terms of an economic asset.
A question that comes to mind is acceptance, especially with the new generation now. How do you plan on distributing that?
Well, as I said, the challenge as it is now and always will be, how do we take tradition and turn and contemporize it that is useful? And there's ways that you can do it. Now, in Barbados, we have a traditional dance called Landship. As an organization, Pilots, we took it and we created something called Afro-Ship. And what did we do? We kept the dance vocabulary, and vocabulary means the movements. You know, it's like in dance terminology, you say dance vocabulary. And we changed the music structure, and we put African drums and African rhythms to it. We changed the costume, the look of the costume. So this dance, which was traditionally done by just the traditional kettle and bass and the old-time naval costume, we had this fantastic African-looking costume that was just mind-blowing. The rhythm was much more exciting. So we can do some of that. And it did not lose its traditional form, because the vocabulary of the movements remain the same. So there's ways in which you can bring modern songs, modern looks, but keep some of the tradition and just merge them together. You know, and we experimented as a region with Zouk. I remember Eddie Grant was experimenting with a beat in Barbados, Ring Bang. And so we can take traditional songs. He was taking our traditional music and he was adding a flavor to it to create a new song. And now in discussions with your minister yesterday, he said the same thing. Look, we need to start looking at the songs of the region and experimenting with them. And he's right. We can take our traditional spooge that we have in Barbados, and it actually is something we're looking at. How do we now add to modern songs to traditional spooge rhythm to make it acceptable internationally? So it can be done. So once we have it is in its traditional form, we can begin to experiment with it like chemists and add different formulas till we get the right formula.
And do the necessary tweaks. Interesting. Now let's talk about some of the activities that have been conducted thus far. I know Chris could probably chime in on us for that.
Well, in terms of activities, I think that the individual who has been the key facilitator in this project in Grenada is Sandra James. And Sandra is the logistics coordinator of Heritage Theatre Company. She's the one that writes the projects and so on. So she never goes on stage. So she has been the one who has actually set up meetings with different key stakeholders in Grenada. And she was the one who organized the consultation last year, which took place in the upper room at the Trade Center.
And the other groups.
And I had the opportunity to speak a bit with the people who were there at that meeting, and it just comes back to me visually. It was dominated by women.
Yeah, it's very true.
So women are proven to be the torchbearers of these cultural retention.
I can't remember seeing a man.
There were no men.
Probably no men.
You and Rodney.
I sort of made the joke that you're all women here by all appearances, and so on. So we're looking at continuing the discussion with dancers. With folklorists, people like Susan Benjamin,
writers.
with writers, the Tivoli drummers,
The drummers,
because
yeah.
drumming is an important aspect of the indigenous art form and so on, and the connection with our roots, African roots, and so on. And we need to bring more writers, but they were writers, people
Yeah.
from the Writers Association
we're there, yeah.
are present. And so these are the people who we're engaging with, as well as with the government officials. In the meeting yesterday, attending the meeting was also Mr. Orlando Romain,
Yeah.
who is the coordinator of the Glen Office of Creative Affairs, and he's the director of that. And he was the architect of the Unleashed conference, which took place last year in the month of May, and is pushing very hard for. We saw his creativity in the independence celebrations with the drone display and all kinds of things and so on. We obviously will continue that level of discussion and dialogue with key players. We need to bring more writers and theatre personalities and singers into this whole process. I want to use the opportunity to address the issue. You asked the question, how you get acceptance,
Yes.
right? People cannot accept something they don't know and understand.
That's true.
So part of our mission is to present our indigenous art forms, our intangible heritage in a manner that makes sense to people, that connects, that resonates with people. And if you're talking about young people, a lot of them are interested in film, in music. They are interested in the digital media and so on. So the challenge we face is to serve up the meal in a manner that is appetizing to them. We have to set the table in a manner that reaches their sensibilities. Okay? So when we do the research, we have to cross over now to how to bring this in a format,
Packaging.
in a packaging,
Yes.
right?
Palatable.
That reaches and connects with them, and this is how we gain acceptance and so on. Make no mistake, and I make the point all the time. The content is the most important factor. If you don't have content, you can't do nothing. You could dress it up, with all kind of decoration, but ultimately, if there's no content, so we have to unearth the good stuff and find creative ways of packaging it in a manner that will cross over to the next generation and so on, and will feed into.
You don't want bad tasting food and a pretty looking box.
No. I mean, very bad.
This is what you get with creatives.
It's almost as bad as the email costume.
Exactly.
Exactly. So we
The
need
box must look good and food must taste good.
Everything full presentation.
So what happens when they don't mesh?
There's problems. There's problems.
So we need to cross over, and I believe that we need to tell the stories in a manner that reaches and connects, and it's vocabulary of dance. I like that expression, right? So the vocabulary of dance must speak to the sensibilities of the people who we want to reach. I just want to say we are operating within an environment where it's the first time since the revolution in the 1979 and 93, right? When you have had policymakers coming out and unreservedly saying, we stand behind the creative arts and the culture.
Yes.
And in the case of the current administration, they have gone as far as documenting in an official way through legislation and so on, support for the arts, the creative arts. You have a situation where, there's a waiver on inputs into the creative industry in a formal way, and people can access this thing, and the creative arts have been identified as a main economic sector and so on.
Nice.
We have to walk through that door that has been open for us, right? And really make something of the wonderful creativity among our people.
All right. I want to thank you folks for being with us this morning. It's interesting to know about this. This chip project, I'm seeing it go into a level that, will bring back what we as Caribbean people and the people within our area may have been losing. Because a lot of folks are saying, the culture of society is lost. You watch from the various carnivals around the Caribbean, it's not as it used to be.
Yeah.
You understand? And you see a lot of the different organizations are trying to bring back what we in a particular way where it was.
Yeah.
You know, some folks will say when it's gone, it's gone. You know, some folks may say that, but there's always that little piece that you can always revive some way, and that's where this particular project comes in terms of in terms of identifying and preserving. I want to thank you folks once again for being with us this morning. Interesting conversation. If we had the time, we stay all morning and
Till tomorrow morning.
and talk about this. So once again, Chris, of course, Rodney, and of course, Sofia, I want to thank you for being here. Any closing comments before we take a wrap this morning?
Well, I just want to say thank you to Heritage Theatre Company and also for the minister and his team yesterday for allowing us to have a healthy, very productive conversation, and for the EU Creative Caribbean University for understanding the importance of such an initiative and putting support behind it, for allowing us to start the initiative, and my team at Pioneers for having especially Mr. Grant, who would have helped with the design of the program, for having that foresight that fits within the environment, the needs of the environment of this time. So I am very thankful for that team and the support in Grenada and so far.
All right, Rodney?
Yeah, just thanks to the government and the people of Grenada, to our brothers and sisters in Heritage, and let's just keep the folk alive.
Great, man. And Chris? Hope you didn't email me anything then.
Thank you to Rodney and Sofia and my brother and sister in the arts and so on. And we look forward to further consolidating this relationship and this collaboration. Thank you.
All right. Hey, all right. Thanks a whole lot once again. Hey, folks, that's where we take a wrap for this edition of the Mid-Morning Buzz here on, of course, a Classic Radio GBN TV. Until another edition, folks, have a good one. That's where we say goodbye.
Drop them.